Hey folks, this is Joe Wheaton from Utah State University, and we are just pulling into Birch Creek here. This is Birch Creek, Idaho. As Jay Wilde, who we're going to go meet, would say, it's the real Birch Creek. It's on a typical August wildfire season day here. A lot of the west is burning, so this haze that we're seeing is just a lot of smoke. And we're just coming in about a minute away, and we will go meet Jay Wilde, and we're going to spend today going on a little bit of a tour of Birch Creek and hearing Jay's story about the place and how it's changed and what he's tried to do to recover it. Jay. So we're here. This is Jay Wilde. I'm going to introduce you to. We're going to do a awkward sort of as if we were out with you today on a real field trip. And Jay, you want to just tell folks what you usually tell the students here, which is just kind of starting the story of Birch Creek and where we're at right here.
Yeah, well, as a youngster, I grew up on this ranch, and as a youngster, we always had plenty of flow in the stream. I graduated from high school and left, was gone for 30 years, and I just always wanted to come back. And when I came back, we had a stream that dries up some years in June. Typically, on an average snowpack year, an average precip, it would be dry the first week in July. So, wanting to run cattle here, that was my goal when I came back, was to make this farm, this old farm that I grew up on, turn it into a cow outfit. Cows got to have two things. They got to have something to eat and something to drink. And without water in the stream, why, it doesn't matter how much I improve the country to generate more feed, it's not going to do me any good if I don't have water. So that was my goal.
So, but we're sitting right next to Birch Creek, and I hear running water over here. What's going on?
That's a spring, and it's actually a source culinary water. There's a chlorinator here, and it serves, I think, about 33 hookups, 33 houses. Okay. So that's what, from here down, we do have water. But from here up, it was dry.
So if we go across, so Birch goes underneath this parking area here in a culvert, and if we go over here, you tell me this is it's what are we? We're August 21st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
we're dry here, but we do still have minimal flow. There's not a lot of water coming out of the canyon, but the upper end of the ranch here, we do have water.
And we're on Forest Service right now, or are we on your deeded ground?
This is private. This is my deeded ground.
How many acres? There's
about 600.
So can't hear running water anymore. We'll just get a peek over into Birch Creek. So this dries up. Is this is the frame of reference for where I mean it used to flow year round, or?
Yeah, it used to run here year round.
Well, let's keep going up the canyon, and we'll keep filling in this story. But it sounds like yeah, used to flow, and cows need feed. You got the feed thing sorted out real nice. The water thing is another part of the equation here, huh?
Well, with the with the stream being dry, I put in a system. There was some seeps up here about a mile away, pretty close to the Forest Service boundary on our deeded ground, and I developed those and piped that water into water troughs. This deal right here is that's the drain. This is the very bottom end of it.
Okay.
And I had to do that for water. And we put those troughs in strategic spots so we can water. Some of them water 3 different pastures. So we put them in the right location so we could water those cattle regardless of what pasture they're in. And it's off-stream watering, so it's a good deal for the riparian and everything. Keep the cattle out of here.
And that's all gravity fed?
Yep.
Oh, that's nice. As we're walking back, do I dare ask you to tell the story about the little argument you got in with a horse, explaining your brace there?
It's an old, really an old injury. I had a cow get me down. I was trying to tag its calf in 2009. And did some pretty serious damage to my neck. And I had surgery then, but once you get injured, then you start generating bone spurs and have all kinds of problems. So I ended up this summer, I had a horse threw his head in the air and came down and hit me on top of the head and jammed my neck, and my arm went dead. So anyway, long story short, I had to go get it fixed, and I'm just recuperating. So you'll have to bear with me and my neck harness here. So.
Well, I'm glad to see you're recovering and getting out a bit. Not as spry as you usually are when we're out here, but you're getting there, right? So.
Oh yeah, we'll make it. We'll get back to normal.
Cool.
Okay. Anymore to happen any better.
So Jay, you were talking about some of the water. Is that what we're looking at across over here? You got some of the water development?
Yeah, right up on that ridge on the edge of that field.
Yep.
Where those railroad ties are sticking up.
Okay. And then we're looking down at the creek, and there's a fair bit of wood, but it is it's bone dry right now. And is that I mean, for the whole restoration, I guess that's something that that would be the ultimate goal, right? Is to get that thing flowing again.
Well, yeah, you know, I never gave up on it even after I solved the dilemma with not having any stock water.
Yep.
It just seemed to me like it was wrong for it to be dry.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of life that depends on water being in that stream, and if it's dry, you know, I just don't think it's fair that we throw our hands in the air and say, oh, it's dry and there's nothing we can do about it. Because hopefully there's something in our management that we can restore this flow. I mean, all this low-tech stuff is working, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. I think there's more things that need. For one thing, we need to have some fire back in this watershed. We haven't had a fire in here in over 120 years, so some of it needs to burn. It may be catastrophic because the fuel load and the lighter fuels and everything is to the point where it'll be a pretty catastrophic fire, but it really needs to happen and reset that clock.
Yeah. And how does that relate to, I mean, with the fuel loading and fire risk, that's one part of it, but what about tying that back to the hydrology side of things here?
Well, we got so much vegetation now compared to the way it was 50 or 60 years ago when I was growing up here. That vegetation's using all the water, and there just isn't any left to create flows.
Right.
Everything out here that's living requires water survive. Sometimes there's just not enough left for stream flow.
Well, there's Birch Creek, and what's this little spot we're walking up to?
Oh, it's where I took some photos a few years back that I was trying to draw attention to the diurnal fluctuations in the flow. And, we'd have flow here in the mornings, and by afternoon or early evening we wouldn't have any flow. And that, to me, that indicated that we had a lot of evapotranspiration going on.
Mm-hmm. There's still a trickle.
No, there's not much, but it's better than what it has been for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and so we'll get up to some of the restoration work that's been done on the Forest Service, and we'll get to how what we're seeing right now, even with the trickle, is this would dry up typically when? He told us a few minutes ago.
The first week in July.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having 90-degree days here, in the temperatures in the 90s, and we still got a little bit of flow.
Yeah.
That just wouldn't have happened without the work that we've done up higher on the watershed.
And I mean, just from I know that you developed the water resources so that you had the off-channel watering and kind of solve the problem from the perspective of the cattle operation. But can you talk a little bit just about how having water, even if it's not perennial, just having water for an extra week, an extra month, and what that means?
Yeah, well, for one thing, if this water was running on through and getting down to the parking lot where we looked at there to start with, that generates more irrigation water. And there's an irrigation diversion right below, right there at that parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty valuable. But even just having that much water right there, at least we're keeping the willows alive.
Mm-hmm.
Cottonwoods, I don't particularly like cottonwoods, but it's keeping this riparian alive. If we do have some water, there's lots of critters that's benefiting from it. Doesn't really do me any good. I don't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that we need to do what we can to restore this flow.
So this is the spot where you took pictures in the morning and in the evening, and I remember some of the timestamps on those that were the dates. This is probably when
it was in June.
In June.
In June, mid-June, and we'd have a flow like this.
Uh-huh.
In the morning, and in the evening it'd be bone dry. So that was my whole thought when I started thinking about trying to get this flow to return. That the problem we had was evapotranspiration. There was just so much vegetation in the riparian zone that was drying the water table out, and there just wasn't any water to create flows. And this spot right here, you can see the remnants right over there, a pile of stumps and logs and stuff. This area right down through here was all huge cottonwood trees.
Sort of like the ones we saw as we were driving up downstream of the crossing.
Yeah.
And
so, I knew the cottonwood trees drew a lot of water out of the water table, so I thought, well, we had a flow coming into this drove of cottonwood trees and nothing coming out. So I thought, you know, if I cut all those cottonwood trees down, maybe the creek will run on downstream. And
So you did that from about here to...
yeah, maybe a little bit above here and down
on down to the...
100 yards. Maybe.
So you cut some big... There's some cottonwoods there and scraggly old...
Yeah, they're above the road, and they're you know they were probably part of the complex, probably still are, because those cottonwoods are all rhizomatous, they're all hooked together. So that's what it looked like all down through here. So I cut them down and just went in there with my cat and went to skidding them out, and I made a kind of a mess here, but. And the government folks got after me, pretty serious. I was in pretty deep trouble. But anyway, it all turned out okay. And the interesting thing of it is, after I cut those cottonwood trees down, the stream ran on down to the next patch of cottonwood.
So the experiment, you got a football field of extra flow.
Yeah, yeah. And I proved my point.
Yeah.
You know, whether it went anywhere or not, but I'd satisfied my own curiosity about whether they would flow.
So you've told me before, once you start cutting down that cottonwood, what happens when you put that chainsaw into it?
Oh, the water runs out of it. It doesn't just drip out; it runs.
Yeah.
They're full of water.
Yeah.
They suck up a lot of water. I think they're classified as a phreatophyte, and they what that amounts to is they'll use more water than what they really need to survive if it's available.
So
there's a stump off one of the trees that's still there.
So we've got a little bit of a flow sort of trickling along. There's some of those stumps. This is you got a few cut on this side too, right?
Yeah,
but where it's flowing right now is pretty much to the end of the experiment before you got in trouble with Johnny Law. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. And if it wasn't for COVID, we would have had a treatment out here. We would have brought the class, a capstone class of undergraduates out to, they had actually done a design here, but we weren't allowed to get together and build. And we had scheduled 2 workshops that we would have had put a bunch of free labor into doing some work down here. Can you talk just briefly about what the hope is? We're going to go up and take a look at what you started and what Beaver took over, but if we could put some structures in down here, what's the thinking?
Well, my thought is if we can put some structures in that'll saturate the water table down here, we're downstream from all those trees that are depleting the water table above. The closer we can get it down here, the more good it'll do down here.
Right.
So that's my thought. I'd like to see this water table down here saturated so we get that dry season flow back into the stream. See, it's bound to help. You know, I don't know if we'll get beavers down here. We don't really have any aspen.
Yeah.
There's a few cottonwoods, and the problem is they're the wrong kind of cottonwoods. They're narrow leaf cottonwoods, and beavers prefer the Fremont cottonwood. So, and we see higher in the watershed, they don't seem to be doing anything to the cottonwood.
Well,
but they do have a lot of aspen up there, so that's their first choice.
Yeah, and you know, like us, if you know there's something tastier on the shelf, you go for that. There's definitely enough down here for them, but yeah, I mean, it's basically Riverscape health principle number 4, right? Inefficiency.
Yeah.
So if we can slow the flow and hold on to it a little and increase productivity here, hold on to that water, let it slowly leak out later, then we can move things on down. Well, let's head upstream.
Okay.
So this is we're just right at the cattle crossing here, where we get on the Forest Service land.
Yeah, this is Forest Service land now.
And so maybe while we're driving up, you could explain a little bit about after the Cottonwood experiment, kind of what your thinking was on what next for trying to get some perennial flow back.
Well, it finally hit me that we didn't have any beavers in the watershed anymore. Back in the days of perennial flows, why we always had usually 3 complexes in the watershed from here up.
Isn't this right where we're driving by right now? One of the spots where you got the last Beaver Dam complex you can remember from like the 80s, I think,
the
early
last
80s?
dam was right here just off the road on the street. That was in the 80s sometime. We do have a picture of that dam. We don't think it was active at the time we took the picture, but it still was holding water. But that was the last sign of any beavers in the watershed. So anyway, I started pursuing the idea of putting beavers in. That was in 2006. And I went to the Forest Service and told them we needed to put beavers in and try to get there okay. And that went on for a couple of years, and finally in 2008 they gave me the go-ahead. And I got six beavers that year in 2008 from the government trapper. They were just random beavers, nuisance beavers that he had trapped in different places, most of them over around Bear Lake and on the Bear River, over between Montpelier and Salt Springs. We put them in up here, but they didn't stay. Either they didn't stay or they didn't survive. We don't know. But we didn't get any beaver activity going. So, and the next year, in 2009, there's a creek over here 4 or 5 miles south of here that had beavers in it, and in one spot the beavers were back in the water up and contaminating the culinary water supply. So they was actually shooting the beavers to get rid of them. And I made arrangements to trap those beavers, live trap them, and we moved them over here. And same thing, nothing happened.
So how many in total? 2008, there were 6?
There were six in 2008 and 7 in 2009.
And this
put
is
13 beavers in there and nothing happened. So.
And you know, we've got our models, and you know, all models are wrong, some are useful, but of course our model says the obvious, which is it's pretty good beaver dam building habitat because you got some water. Once we get on the Forest Service, it sort of stays perennial, leaf flowing, and we've got, I mean, we're driving by quakies and maple, and there's some birch and a little bit of willow. I mean, there's
there are willows along the stream and dogwoods.
Kind of, so kind of surprising it didn't. I mean, you'd think with that many over 2 years like that, it's logical that it would they would take. But you saw some cuttings, right?
Yeah, just a place or two, but I never did see it down. Never did see it down.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it became pretty obvious to me that I didn't know what I was doing. But I didn't give up. I kept reading and researching. Actually talked to a lady over in Denver that does a lot of live trapping and relocating beavers over around Denver. She explained to me that you got to move the whole family as a unit. They're more likely to stay put if the family unit stays intact. anyway, I learned a lot, and then I finally run on and I was reading an article talked about Joe here, and the article intrigued me to the point I thought I got to get a hold of Joe. So anyway, we made connections, and Joe came up and had a look. He and Nick Bowes thought it looked good, and we had Forest Service people here. And anyway, we set out on a plan to try and get beavers in here so they'd stay.
So, not to spoil the story, but I guess somehow you got beaver in here.
Yeah.
This is you were just telling me it doesn't seem like they're active right now. These guys were super active in here last couple of years, right?
Yeah. You know, and it may be I know late in the summer, the water level dropped in this pond like it is now, but come fall, they came back, beefed the dam up, and put in a food cache. So maybe they're just out browsing around, and maybe they'll be back here in the fall. I don't know. Either that, or maybe they've moved on, and I don't think they've exhausted their food supply here. It doesn't appear.
No, there's plenty. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of fun to watch. I don't know. We've been trying to figure out how these beavers operate and their behavior and that. And it seems like every time we think we got it figured out, why they do something different.
Yeah. So just to catch people up, you started 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
And with a couple of reintroduction attempts, they'd been extirpated entirely, probably since at least the mid 80s, something like that. Yeah. And then let's see, you reached out, what was that, November 2015 or
2014.
2014.
It was in October of 2014. Is when you and I first got together.
And so what we're seeing, we'll fill this back in as we go upstream, but what we're seeing is the result of beaver that were introduced in, when was it,
2015 is when we put when we reintroduced the first beaver.
So there are 5 then,
5 of them.
And then there were another, was it 6 in 2016? 4 in 2016.
In 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
two different families, so we kind of thought it'd be best to have a little genetic diversity.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did it. We put the 5 in 2015, and then 4 more, and we put those in a different location. They went right to work where we released them. This bunch, well, we don't know which bunch is which anymore because we don't know how they've dispersed and migrated. But actually, where we released the original 5 was about, it's probably, it wouldn't be a half a mile, but it's more than a quarter of a mile upstream. And they didn't stay where we released them. They moved upstream another half mile into another complex of BDAs that we had built. And that's where they set up shop and spent the first winter. And then they expanded that complex the next summer. And then about the second year after that is when this complex showed up. So this all happened in 2017.
Yeah.
Is when this started.
Yeah,
and it's been pretty active until now. You know, I don't suppose they're here right now. Or this dam would be full to its crest. That's the active dams are usually flowing over the crest.
But what is pretty remarkable is, even though this isn't active, this dam crest goes, for those that have gone along on the other virtual workshops, I mean, it's valley bottom wide. And even with them you know, whether they come back or not. The disturbance frequency with the floods is not so big that these things are blowing out. And so in terms of filling up this sponge, slowing the flow, slowly leaking that flow out like it is at the base here, such that we can elevate those late season base flows, right? I mean, this is what's starting to happen, and we're at the downstream most extent of beaver activity for now, which is about what, a half mile, quarter mile below one of the release sites.
Yeah, it's probably 3/8 of a mile, I guess, to where we released those first beaver.
And there's, from when we did the dam counts, and every time we do it, it's more and more and more. But I think there's another 11 or 10 right below this dams.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this is the primary dam. The others are all somewhat smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's 2 or 3 of them down through here that's pretty good size.
Yeah.
And you can tell that we got the water table saturated because there's a subalpine fir that's got too wet. So.
And those conifers showing up in the valley bottom, that's kind of a sign of conifer encroachment. It's kind of a sign that your system's not doing what it should be, right?
Yeah, right. Yep.
So you're killing trees, killing your ET pumps.
Yeah, those are subalpine firs, and they're kind of a trash tree. They don't even make good firewood.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's places where they're actually, in the riparians, they're spraying diesel on them and setting them on fire just to get rid of them.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going. There we go. So we're not even to that little camping pull out.
No, it's right around the bend there. We can pull up there and get off the road and then walk back down here.
That is a pretty good size dam. That one's, I don't remember that from.
Yeah, it showed up here last year.
Okay.
They've expanded it.
Yeah.
They've made it bigger and deeper. Yeah, there's some little dams, and this really isn't the stream here. This is just kind of a seep.
So this is an old side channel that's just spring fed?
Yeah. It'll actually run a little water in the spring of the year. Now it's just wet, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can hear the flow over on the other side of the trees. This is probably the worst time to video this stuff because.
Now let's see, this is still on that seep. And this pond will be full in the spring of the year, but there just isn't any water there now to keep the pond full. We get down just below here. The stream actually comes through the trees over there.
Yeah.
Comes in over here.
One that didn't go exactly to plan.
Like a trail up through the brush right there. I thought
Let's see if there was a skid trail.
there's some fairly fresh cuttings here.
Oh yeah, maybe the last few weeks or so.
Yeah.
So this is getting the water in over there, is from the main?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the creek goes over against the slope over there and back this way. Now this dam just showed up here last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they've expanded it quite a little bit this year. Made it higher, deeper, wider.
I mean, it looks like over where the channel is, it's close to 6 feet, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, right that. At least that.
Cool. Oh yeah. Oh, big old trout. You see it? You see that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where the crazy ideas began, huh?
Yeah. This is the first BDA that we built.
Yep.
Right here. Yep.
The BDA is a
Beaver Dam animal.
okay.
This was, and we built 4 that first year, the fall of 2014, 2 here and 2 upstream a ways. Yeah, just as a pilot to see what would happen, whether they'd withstand the high flows and whether they froze over the winter. And,
Spoiler alert, they did.
yeah.
Not freeze, and they lasted through the winter.
Yeah. You know, and when we first built them, they were holding quite a little bit more water back. There was a bigger pond here than what's here now.
Yeah.
But come high flows next spring, why this BDA will still function like we need it to. In fact, if you feel under your feet right now, you can tell that, you know, we're saturated out here.
Yeah.
That's something I always tell folks. We have to remind ourselves there's a lot more water in the riparian zone than just what we see running in the stream.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look at this and go, wow, that didn't really work. But, you know, if we take a closer look at these BDAs, yes, this might, oh yeah, and I'm sinking in here nice. This might have been the crest elevation, and water was flowing up over that, flowing out where you're standing. But this is a graded with a ton of material, and this is something we see a lot, where when these things fill in with sediment, they actually coarsen up. It turns into a structurally forced riffle, and this is good spawning. So this so there were 4 BDAs built as part of that pilot in November. And then that gave us what, the confidence with the Forest Service to then go for the full treatment.
We had to twist a few arms. We had to get the right people involved with regard to the Forest Service, because actually the district ranger kind of got cold feet on the project. He wasn't going to let it happen. So we got Brett Roper, and he's a little higher up in the agency, and he got on board and actually offered to take responsibility for the project. So that got our district ranger off the hook. He was, I think our ranger probably wanted to see it done, but he just wasn't sure he wanted to shoulder the responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And Brett got him off the hook, and so that's how we finally got through all the Forest Service heats.
And so then it was it October or November? So these first 4 went in, let's see, that would have been 2014, November 2014, and then in 2015 in the summer, then there were another, how many? 15 that were built?
We ended up with a total of 19.
19, okay.
BDAs. And by the end of 2015. And then it was in October of 2015 when we released the first 5 beavers right here.
Yeah.
And we'd actually build a lodge right over there.
Oh yeah, Nick's little lodge.
Yeah, Nick,
Yeah.
Nick constructed it. We was hoping that they'd use that as, for their lodge. And we actually put them in there when we released them, and then drove sticks in the ground, so they had to eat their way out.
Which they probably did in about 20 minutes.
I think once they left, why they didn't go back.
Yeah.
They know how to build a lodge, and we don't.
Yeah. But they did, I mean, a few weeks after that, we did come back and see them in this and the next upstream BDA pond.
Yeah, they moved. There was a little bit of activity here.
Yeah.
Not much. There was a tree, an aspen or two that was cut down. But they actually moved upstream about a half mile to where we built the other BDAs, or another complex of BDAs. And that's where they spent that first winter. In my mind, I thought it was a little late to release them, the end of October, but actually that's the perfect time, because they'll go right to work instead of thinking about leaving.
Yes.
They'll go right to work and get them.
Especially with the family.
And the food cache. And,
yeah. Yeah,
it worked out.
The strategy here was definitely kind of like dealing with teenage children. We released them in this one, but we had a BDA complex or two downstream. We had a bunch upstream, and the expectation was release them into some deep water where they're immediately comfortable, but don't expect them to stay, whether they go upstream or downstream, then hope they'll make a choice to stop at one of the other ones. And so they went upstream and did.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to have that deep water for security. It's kind of like you locking your door at night when you go to bed.
Yeah.
Whether there's a predator around or not, they need that deep water for security. That was the key, I guess, because I didn't do any of this when I released those beavers in 2008 and 9. I just thought they'd take care of it themselves. But having these BDAs made it work.
Yeah, and I mean the idea, I mean, that the working hypothesis here was not that this wasn't good habitat. It's great habitat. It's just that if you were abducted off the street and or actually instead of off the street, out of a nice place that you thought was perfectly good and you were taken care of, and then you're just dumped somewhere else, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to split. And versus, we see beaver out of water, and they're klutzy, they're vulnerable, they are a hot dog for wildlife. We see them in the water, and they're graceful swimmers that can escape predators easily. And so Kent Woodruff up at the Methow was really the guy who planted that seed in our head, because they had built a lot of lodges like this, and I don't know, from what they said and what we saw, like, I don't really think the lodges made all that big of a difference. What he said, the spots where they really stuck were old pond sites where there was already some deep water. And so that's where we started thinking, well, what if we could use the BDAs to create some temporary deep water to release them in, just so they're comfortable. And I mean, we've got the video, we could maybe splice it in, but it's can you just describe, I mean, did the beaver seem freaked out when you release them into the water?
Well, they're pretty freaked out because they've been captured and handled with a stick with a cable on the end and noose steel on them. They're pretty freaked out. I know when we released them, they darted in there and stayed.
Yeah.
I mean, hunkered down. They'd been trapped and hauled and handled, and they were glad to get away.
Yeah.
But as far as staying here, they moved on. If they came out of that, we actually had water backed up over to the base of that man-made lodge. And as soon as they came out of there, they was able to get into the water.
Yeah.
And that's their whole defense mechanism. They have to be able to get in the water to survive, to stay away from the predators.
Cool.
In the video the other day, that, Pacific Corp had earmarked $30 million for Bonneville cutthroat trout mitigation. That was part of their relicensing agreement for those hydro dams on the Bear River.
Yeah.
And they're spending a lot of that money for conservation easements. And that's okay. Those conservation easements are protecting that habitat, but that money isn't doing anything to enhance the habitat like we've done here. We've got, in the free-flowing stretches, we've got 10 times as many Bonneville cutthroat trout as we had, according to the Forest Service surveys in 2001, again in 2012. We did it again here last year, and we've now got 10 times as many fish in the free-flowing reaches. In the impounded areas, in the beaver dams, we've got 50 times as many fish. I mean, can you imagine? This project didn't cost. I had a $3,000 grant from the Forest Service when we did this, and everybody pretty much worked for nothing. It was all volunteer work. But if we spent $30 million doing this kind of restoration, we could restore every stream in the Great Basin that's got Bonneville cutthroat trout in it.
Yep.
And have money left over to go help out with the Yellowstone cutthroat trout.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, it's crazy. The fish response, that's so neat to see that happen. I mean, we've got it. They're not threatened, but they're sensitive, or they're not listed. But there's been a movement to get them listed. It didn't fly, but if we could do some more of this work, can you imagine what we could accomplish?
Well, and before I turned the video back on, you said something that really struck me, that this started out as a project to restore flow, and it's doing that, but then what did you say?
It's the fish response is a byproduct of it, I guess. It's just something that I hadn't really thought about, but now it's become really important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the key reasons we ought to be doing this.
Well, in that first Beaver Dam stop we have, I just love that picture of Emily with
my granddaughter caught a bonnie in there about that long.
Yeah. Well, and what the biggest one you'd see before of the few that were hanging on.
Maybe 4, 5, 6 inches max.
Yeah. And now there's, right when we walked up, there's probably a 8-incher that was just pretty cool. Well, I don't really hold a grudge because I think the story's better, but this is where you wouldn't let us work, Jay.
Yeah. Yeah, this meadow, it's a MIM site on our grazing MIM, multiple indicator monitoring. And I've got data here since 2001, and when we were building these BDAs. This is a perfect spot to put them, because you could get them out, the water up out of the channel and flood this meadow, and it's a perfect spot for them. But I wouldn't let these guys build BDAs in my MIM site, because we've made a lot of progress here, and it's really changed, and I didn't want to see it flooded. But as it turns out, the beavers, after they decided they'd do it, and that's all right. I mean, it got flooded, but we can compare the data now with, as far as vegetation, compared to what it was before, and so it's all a learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, that was as close as we could get. We built some BDAs here. Yeah. There's a couple of fun ones here, because this is where the beaver built that bigger dam and drowned out some of our BDAs, and then right here is where when they were active in here, they started diverting it out and flooding that meadow, and then down at the bottom there is a massive dam that they built. Was that first winter in 2015?
No, the first winter they spent right here.
Okay.
And then the following year.
So it was 2016 that they really went to town, and I guess that actually, yeah, that was in the spring that they started after spring runoff. Yeah, so it's these old BDAs, some of which they co-opted and built up. That one was shunt and flow off to the left, and then I can't remember the count, but just downstream of this, just down to the edge of the meadow, wasn't there like 9 dams that they built, something like that?
Yeah, at least a half a dozen.
Uh-huh.
Half a dozen. Yeah.
And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that where that big down tree is there's another BDA above that. I think that's the one that they just drowned out.
Yeah, they had a dam in here just below that down tree. Actually floated out the BDA above it.
This is also where you took a little fall in the spring through the snow.
Yeah.
Does I remember?
Yeah, I was up here March 1. There was about 4 feet of snow here, and it was set up enough to where you could walk on top of the snow without sinking in. And I got right here, and all of a sudden went through, and it was hollow underneath. And once the snow all melted and everything, well, we got looking, and it was pretty obvious that those beavers were using the snow cave, because there was cuttings and all kinds of indications that they were actually living in that snow cave. So you won't find that in any of the literature, but it's pretty obvious. I've seen it in more places since, where it's pretty obvious that in the wintertime they'll hollow out a snow cave and use it for a lodge.
Well, yeah, we often have the banter and the joke about the and the ologists, ranchers and the doers, and then us pencil neck academic types. But I think we're going to fix that. Not seeing it in the literature, and get your first author or your first publication, right? That
Nick's
you and
working on that.
Yeah. Get the snow cave thing in there. It is really neat, and in the winter when you see all those little, I mean, it just looks like chutes and ladders, like a game. I mean, there's all those snow slides that they have, between ponds and stuff, and kind of fun. But yeah, this dam right here is one that they built, and even though it's breached and not maintained right now, it's still holding back a lot of water. And as we wander out here across the dam, we can see our suggestion of that little BDA. And when this was backwatered, it backwatered all the way back to that dam crest back there, well, to the base of that, and just drowned out the BDA that we built, which is perfect, just fine. And the little snow lodge entrance is right over there.
Generation.
Oh yeah.
That's something about an aspen. If you cut one down, it stimulates regeneration. So, there's people who say, oh, the beavers will cut down all the aspen, but that's really what the aspen need.
Yeah. Now, while we're here, can you mention just what your grazing operations are, how much use this gets? Because clearly this isn't looking like much yet.
No, we won't have any cattle in here until after the 1st of September.
Mm-hmm.
We've changed our whole management to try and use the uplands and let these riparian areas go until we get mature.
Right.
Everything here is pretty much done growing, and then when we do come in here, we don't hit it very hard. There's not much grazing here. It's just a narrow canyon with not a very wide valley bottom. So there's not much grazing. And if you get a lot of cattle in here for very long, why, you can do some pretty serious damage. But it's been part of our strategy to keep the cattle in the uplands, and they do good up there. That's not a problem. It's a little bit of a problem getting them up there, but we've kind of got it figured out. So, and they'll start trickling out of there. We may see some cattle above this cattle guard right here above us, but there won't be too many there yet.
Yeah.
If we get too many, then we gather them up and push them back up in the highlands. But we've kind of got them trained, so they like it up there. It's a lot cooler.
Yep.
And the feed kind of changes. Once we go up there, why, it's mostly a forb diet instead of the grasses.
Mm-hmm.
So there are grasses, but they eat a lot of forbs up there. And it's later, so the feed is fresher than what it is down here. It's not as old and rank, so they like being up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the parts of this story up here on Birch Creek. I mean, for some, the beaver story is really exciting, and the fish story and blah blah blah, but none of that would be possible without the changes to the grazing management that you guys made, because prior to that, I mean, this whole allotment, it's a huge allotment. How many acres? It's
there's 10,000-15,000 acres in the allotment.
Yeah. And we've done the mapping on the valley bottom, but I can't remember exactly what it is, but I mean, maybe 150 acres. I mean, it's tiny compared to the whole allotment. And historically, when you turn the cows out, where are they going to be? They're going to be right here in the valley bottom. And by you guys changing things to get the pastures in, keep them moving them around, kind of chasing the areas where there's feed, and then this only operating really for a week or two on the way out at the end of the growing season. I mean, that's why this looks so amazing from sort of a riparian vegetation management perspective, and that's what paved the way to making the beaver reintroduction possible.
Yeah. And besides that, we're not getting our butt chewed every time the Forest Service comes over.
That's a plus, huh?
We were in pretty deep trouble.
Yeah.
It was something that I knew we was going to have to do. It was a little tough to convince some of the guys, because we had to build a lot of fences and developed water, built ponds, and developed springs and stuff. It goes back to they got to have something to eat and something to drink, and without the water, you're just not going to keep them up there.
Right.
So we did a lot of work, but we've got it working pretty darn good now.
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty inspiring, lesson for a lot of other forests and a lot of other permittees, that it is possible. It takes some hard work, and you guys had to treat it as it still is called an experiment, right? It's still not baked into normal practice, but
no, it's still not part of our term permit.
Yep.
But in fact, we should have, if we had been going according to our term permit, we'd already be home with our cattle.
Mm-hmm.
But the way we've been operating, we've been able to get 45-day extension.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
The Forest Service sometimes will give you a week or 2 weeks, 45 days. But it's the way we've made it work. We just had so much of that those uplands that never got touched. That's just as good as the cattle, probably better than being here, because once they've been here for a little while, there's nothing to eat here.
Right.
And the damage it does is pretty significant. So anyway, that's been our goal.
It's great.
And we're making it work.
Well, let's wander on.
It looked like this last year at this time of year, but then in the fall I'll come back and beef it up and
Yeah.
put them in a food cache.
Yeah.
Then with that big dam up Mill Hall, it was dormant all last summer, but that's where they come back to in the fall.
You know, they got a lot more cover, you know, from vegetation, and I just have a feeling they're more transient in the summertime, kind of bouncing around and just eating whatever's good. And then, like you say, I mean, come September, tend to figure out where you're going to be for the winter and get some work done.
Yeah, you can always tell where they figure on spending the winter, because there'll be a big pile of brush in the pond right in front of their lodge. So.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of these fir trees is the one that we crashed one of those earlier generations of the drone into.
Yeah. On that slope.
Yeah. I can't believe that nothing broke those stupid drones. They just kept, you can crash them out 50 foot out of the sky and it's still like, new propeller. Oh yeah. Looks dormant, but
well, you can tell that the water table's saturated, you know.
Oh yeah.
With that, the pond will be dry. There's still some water in this one. In fact, Emily caught a fish out of here the other day.
Uh-huh.
Or a month ago, I guess. She's quite the fisherman. And that was, she was here when they did that other video.
Uh-huh.
They interviewed her.
Yeah, and there's where the beaver ruined our perfectly good stream gauge, positioned well above where we expected them to be. That's just fine. What the hell is this water running?
This water that's coming down the road is coming out
of the dam?
Well, it's coming out across the road up here from Beaver Dam.
Oh my gosh. Haven't been here for a while, Jay.
Oh yeah? Yeah.
I know you, I mean, you're sneaking up here all the time, so this is way bigger than what I remember. Wow. They've really built the crests up on those. Tunnel. Yeah, they just keep building up the height on these. Wow. I mean, that one upstream there, it's got to be 10 feet high.
Yeah.
I mean, even this one's got to be 8.
The lodge up there is huge.
Yeah?
It's really big.
Should we grab our walking sticks and wander up?
Yeah.
Well, this is a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
Little road flooding. Easy to mitigate if they want to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, they've cut that bar pit right there.
Yeah. So this is Mill Hollow going up there. We'll wander up there later. Wow. But to get water, this is from the head built up in these upper dams?
Yeah, evidently, yes. Yeah. Well, there wasn't water running here, running out of that bank until these Beaver Dams went in.
Gosh. This is just... That is an impressive lodge back there. And huge dam. Another one. So, how old are these?
2 years. Yeah.
2018, huh?
Yeah. Well, there wasn't much here in 2018. Last year they built them up pretty good, and then again this year they're still working on them.
Yeah.
This dam right here used to be 4 feet high.
Uh-huh.
And they've built this dam down here up now to where it's almost got that one flooded.
So this guy down here is built so tall that there's only like 12 inches of head drop between those two.
Yeah, maybe not that much.
Yeah. So cool how when they keep building up, you know, the start on the original channel. I mean, this was deep. That's close to 10 feet.
Yeah, that'd make a good swimming hole.
Yeah. And, but then when they just keep building up and they just wrap these crusts around and then spread it out. I mean, this is actually now overland flow is irrigating the little Mill Hollow tributary over here.
Yeah.
Wow. This has got to make you proud though, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this has really been fun to watch. And you know, it took so long for it to happen for me. I came up with the idea of putting beavers in here in 2006, and I didn't see the first beaver dam until 2015.
Right.
The fall of 2015. To see this happen it made all the effort worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trickle of water, you know. This is one of the, like, you know, in terms of a photogenic day, we've picked about the worst between the smoke and the, you know, and with such a trickle, you know, this is when your water's looking a little less desirable for swimming than normal, but it's still just amazing what has happened. And I mean, if we were to come up here, I mean, we can go to the reaches in between, but in the summer up here, it would have been flowing perennially, but how wide would the creek have been? Yeah.
You know, there isn't, that stream isn't very big here.
No. I mean, that's the headwaters right there, right?
Yeah.
Mill is only a mile up there, right?
Yeah, or half mile.
Mm-hmm. Half mile of the springs.
Yeah.
And
they don't need much water to build a pond.
no.
They can take a trickle and turn it into a pretty good pond.
Yeah, it's you know, I've told you this, but I think this thing Nick and I were so obsessed with so much of our careers is habitat quality for fish, and you know, just your eye is set on the little stream you've got, and like, okay, well, how can we make the quality in that better? And this is just quantity. I mean, just straight up quantity of aquatic habitat. You've you've probably increased 5 to 10-fold in these areas with beaver activity by changing the speed that water's moving through this system. And there's no way you can do that without quality going along for the ride. And it's just, but just having so much more habitat.
Well, the thing about fish, can't have fish without water.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
It looks to me like the more water you got, the more aquatic habitat, and the more fish you'll have. And
Yeah.
that's sure been proven here.
Exactly. So look at that little spring and the little waterfall coming in over there. Is, you know, we were talking about, well, are they ever going to get up to Squirrel Hollow? And it seems like it's when the main stem habitat gets to capacity and they sort of do their job there, that's when you start seeing the spillover. And it sort of seems like that's roughly what's happening here with Squirrel Hollow. I mean, yeah, they can make a go of it, but they're not going to bother to until they've done what they can on the rest of this stuff down here. You can get a picture right there. That is an awfully tall beaver.
Yeah.
To chew that thing.
Oh, it's all over out in there.
So you're growing 6-foot tall beaver up here? You're about 6'1".
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, they're out here in the wintertime on the top of the snow, eating those off. They don't hibernate. They stay active in the winter, and we'll see all kinds of signs where they're out in the wintertime on top of the snow.
Okay, so they're just normal height beaver.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just regular babies. Those ones with the yellow tags belong to Royce. Yeah. I see the brand on that red calf there. Oh, they're where they belong.
Yeah. She's waiting for you to tell her.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Maggie?
Hey. Come here. No. There's nothing wrong with that calf.
No.
That's a nice heifer.
Oh yeah.
On the
So this is the confluence of Squirrel Hollow, where there's a whole stack in that steep little tributary of old beaver dams. And was it Casey, your son, or you that remembered swimming in them? Yeah.
They were active when he was little.
In the 70s. And
we've got, they're working up this main stem instead of up Squirrel Hollow.
oh, they are? Okay.
And there's probably, I walked up through there the other day, there's probably 8 or 10 small dams. Some of them are just debris dams that they've pushed a bunch of mud up against.
Sure.
You know, they're pretty opportunistic.
Yeah.
There isn't anything up through there with much size. But
And are these just starting this year, or was that yeah?
Yeah, this just showed up this summer.
Okay. It'll be interesting, you know, because some of the other places where you've seen them do a little bit of stuff in the summertime, but then come fall, like, be interesting to see if same
That's
thing.
when they seem to get real active as far as dam building and stuff.
Yeah.
Is in the fall. So we need a place to spend the winter, I guess.
Well, maybe go have a wander up Mill Hollow.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. You know, it's not going to be long and they're going to be down there looking at culvert.
Yeah. Be a crying shame if the road got shut down, huh?
Yeah. I think the Forest Service actually got it proposed. In fact, I think they got the money to do it, to reroute this road.
Uh-huh.
They're going to come up here and then they're going to put a bridge in instead of a culvert.
Yeah.
And get above all this wet. So I don't know. I thought maybe it was going to happen this summer. Brad Higginson, he's kind of been behind that deal.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it.
You know, there's something that's kind of interesting growing right out of that dam. Is some new willow.
Yeah.
Those willow sticks that those beavers put in those dams are sprouted and growing.
Yeah. Every once in a while they get them in the right way up and they grow.
Yeah.
I love that Forest Service was struggling with how to deal with this road that they were trying to decommission.
Yeah, they spend all kinds of money putting rocks and digging holes, and now you go right up here and the beavers got it flooded. So they could have saved their money.
And that's not just helpful with the ATVs that would be illegally using it, but also the snowmobiles, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't think the snowmobile has come this way much. They got this water up here. It stays open in the winter because it's real close to the source.
Yeah.
And when it comes out of the ground, it's probably 40 some degrees. And so it don't get froze.
Mm.
So the water will stay open.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't freeze over, so those snowmobilers, they don't go through the water very well.
Well, I don't think that these particular aspen are long for this world.
Yeah.
But there'll be a lot more that come back. It's fun to see how much recruitment you're getting up on the hill slopes here, and after they've harvested some of the stuff down the valley bottom.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of carnage.
Yeah.
It's aspen are all chopped down and limbed. This is a lot more open in here than it was. And all your favorite fir there are, or are those the spruce?
No, those are subalpine firs.
Yeah.
You don't get the Doug firs. Those are Doug firs you put up on the slopes, but everything in the bottom there is subalpine firs.
They're all getting drowned out.
Yeah. Yeah, they've harvested a lot of trees here.
Yeah.
It always looked like perfect habitat to me.
Yeah.
Just because of the aspen.
Yeah.
And when I released the beavers that I've been in that didn't stay, this is where I put them.
Yeah.
And then we come back with some BDAs and released some beavers here in the same spot, and they stayed.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Hawk sitting on that snag that just went away. There he flies across. See him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hawks or something.
Yeah, red tail.
Yeah, so this is where we released those beavers in 2016.
Yep.
We released 4 of them, and they stayed right here and went to work. We didn't move a bit.
They started building that Beaver Lodge condominium complex behind us there, huh?
Yeah, there's 2 lodges right.
Yeah.
There's a little stream that comes between them.
Yeah. And this is just a little overflow channel right here, but the tiny, well, maybe twice as much flow as what we're seeing right there. That was the width of the stream. I mean,
Yeah, this isn't a very big tributary.
a lot more water backed up and spread out here. So it was active a little bit last year, but it doesn't
They
seem.
wintered here.
Yeah.
They come. It looked like this last year, and I thought maybe they'd moved on, but they come back
Yeah.
in the winter time, late in the fall. And
Yep.
beefed it up and actually had a food cache here. So they spent the winter here.
So this is the spot. Maggie's having fun. This is the spot where we tried out what seemed like a blasphemous and crazy idea. That was Beaver Dam analogs without posts.
Yeah.
How could it be?
Yeah, there was a pretty good argument ensued there between the scientists. Well, anyway, put a little one in right there.
Yeah.
maybe a couple of feet, impounded water a couple of feet deep.
Yep.
And the beavers took over and built this whole dam. So, I don't know, it's probably 6 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That dam now.
Yeah, they put a good 3-4 feet of head on top of what little wimpy postless BDA that we built, but the argument was whether or not, like you see up there, that was actually a postless BDA, but when the Forest Service got their new shiny post pounder tool, they wanted to try out, so they put some posts in after the fact. But we thought, do you really need to put the posts in and then weave? Can we just build them like beaver do and lay a bunch of branches and mud and whatnot down? And well, short answer is yeah, you can build it like they do. And apparently the is it 6 that you released here? 4 here, sorry. They were okay with that. Well, kind of fun.
Well, the thing about not driving posts, it opens up all the remote country. You just don't have to get all that equipment in there to do that.
Yeah.
You can go with what's there.
I mean,
As far as materials, and you don't have to worry about transporting a bunch of equipment in there.
as much fun as that 200+ pound power pack is, and the 90-pound driver, and the 50-pound hose, and all the damn posts. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, if you can just get there with your pickup truck, but if you got to pack it, that's a whole different story.
Yeah. Healthy with beaver.
Yeah. You know, that's the way we used to think about it. Tear that dam out and let the water go. What you don't realize is what that dam's doing to this whole valley bottom. It's almost like an aquifer.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving down to this valley bottom. So, yeah, it's interesting. A paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we call it. I mean, I had changed my mind. When I first thought about beavers, I was still a beaver hater, because we hated them when when I was a youngster growing up, they raised all kinds of problems in our irrigation ditches.
Yeah.
So I had to turn it around, but once I got studying and learning, and probably had to be a little bit more open-minded than what I usually am. I'm a little narrow-minded. It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Once you start reading and listening to the people talk about it, it all makes sense. You know, we just got to have beavers in these watersheds for them to be healthy.
And before there are beaver here, what would this riparian look like when the inevitable happens, when all this fuel all around us, somebody, you know, drags a chain or throws a cigarette or whatever, or we get a lightning strike and this thing burns? What would be left of the riparian prior to beaver?
Yeah, there wouldn't be much with these beaver dams. If we wet it up, then it's not going to burn. It'll still be here. It'll be still intact, and you know, if we get sediment discharge off those slopes after a fire, you know, we got a place to catch it and stop it. So, and we will get a fire here. I don't know. It seems like, you know, we all didn't think fire, kind of like beaver. We had to have a paradigm shift on fire.
Yeah.
Fires are the necessary part of the whole ecological process. Sooner or later, you got to reset that clock.
Well, yeah, it's an awesome shared vision of resiliency for everybody involved, for working lands, for beaver, for these ecosystems, right? And being resilient to these disturbances that, you know, we can pretend and bury our head in the sand that they're not going to happen, but, you know, we're going to get fires, we're going to get floods, we're going to get droughts, and how can we weather those? So you promised me at some point, if to get this story out, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this today, you promised me you would I think grow a ponytail and even wear some damn hippie sandals or Birkenstocks like this if you had to. Is that?
Yeah, I'll do whatever I got to get people to listen, because it's an important deal. It's important to me, and I think it's important to Birch Creek. You know, it's we need to be doing this on a lot of other creeks. So.
Well, and you know that when you called. And when we first met, I think I told you one of the things that excited me most. I mean, to you, you know, Birch Creek is everything. It's your life. You grew up here. You've poured your heart and soul into this place, and you know, you've been an amazing steward of it. But to me, one of the things that excited me the most about Birch Creek is that, I mean, there's literally hundreds of Birch Creeks, but there's millions of creeks just like this all over the place. And what excites me is, you know, that we could see responses like this all over the place. So
just think what you could do.
Yeah, pretty cool.
You know, the problem is you got to get people on board. You got to get the public on board. You got to get the agency on board. And there are just a lot of things involved, a lot of hoops you got to jump through. And I think the whole sentiment is starting to turn around a little bit. We're starting to see a little more interest in people wanting to have beavers back on the landscape. Yeah. So, you know, the whole idea is catching on. And, you know, when something makes as much sense as what this does, it ought to catch on. You know, pretty easy to convince people.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it there. We would have enjoyed sharing this story with you in person, out in the field. It's always better. But this is the best we can do with COVID right now. And we hope to see you out in the field sometime in the future. Take care.